And I have a lot to show you, so I'm going to be going pretty quickly, but it's recorded, so you'll be able to come back to this later and kind of see again. And I'm from closer to the East Coast, so I talk faster than maybe on the West Coast. This is my email address, and I do own a domain name, but I don't have a website. I've been too busy to create a website, but tourtoexplore.com. And it's more of a passion project than a business. So it's just something I love showing people gardens, and I love taking people to places they maybe wouldn't go by themselves. So my little history is I moved from Cleveland to Portland about 15 years ago, and pretty soon realized you can basically put a pencil in the ground here and it will grow. So I was telling all my friends, this place is crazy. I joined every organization I could think of. The first one being Hardy Plant Society of Oregon. I was the treasurer for 4 years. And they had a robust tours program, which is how I started organizing tours, first as a volunteer for them. I joined Northwest Perennial Alliance, which many of you know maintain the border here at Bellevue Botanical Garden. They do a fabulous job here, and they do open gardens and other programming. Northwest Horticulture Society, they do programming and events. Pacific Horticulture, I joined that. I became a master gardener for a little while, but this was before COVID. I haven't kept it up, so I wouldn't say I'm a master gardener, but I did the training. And along the way, I came across this book, The 60 Best Gardens to Visit in Oregon, Washington, British Columbia. And since I was new to the area, I started looking around at gardens. And there's one garden that's near here that I stumbled on, Seuss Creek Botanical Garden. If you haven't been, you should go. It's amazing, but hardly anybody knows about it. And from that, I kind of built this company to try to elevate public gardens. And on my journey of discovering my new home, I went to the Portland Japanese Garden, which is world famous as being the most authentic Japanese garden outside of Japan. And I didn't get it. I'd go and I'd be like, okay, well, I don't quite understand it. But I would go and try to learn more. Along the way, I met these people. This is now my husband and his mother and aunt. And they were all born in San Francisco. And I knew nothing about the Japanese culture. I knew nothing about internment camps. And the two ladies were both in internment camps. This is the Crystal City, Texas, where they lived. And my mother-in-law, I think, painted this because she's an artist, but she says, oh, I didn't paint this. I'm not good enough. There's no way I painted this, but I'm pretty sure she did because it says on the bottom some things about her that, hold up a phone and you can translate it. But I learned about internment camps through them, and I learned about the culture. And there's nothing that can be done about it because I thought, why aren't they upset or angry about the internment thing? But they just accepted it, and that's what happened. And I'm into genealogy. I started researching his family, and I could spend the whole rest of the program telling you about his family, but that's how I got to Japan for the first time. I had led tours to these places and kind of was thinking, well, I haven't done anything in Japan, and I'm getting a little curious. So I went by myself the first time. Terry, my husband, didn't have an interest in going, and I went by myself. And I was nervous and like, can I do this? I'm not sure I can do this. But a friend of his who's Japanese said, you can do this. You can. It's way easier than you think it will be. So I'm going to show you a couple of just background things, and it will tie to gardens. I promise it'll tie to gardens, but some of this was background that I didn't realize, and maybe some of it's new to you as well. So Japan is that size compared to the United States. And some quick history, and trust me that this will tie to gardens shortly. They have written history that goes back 2,000 years. There's a lot of influence between China and Japan. At one time or another, they each ruled over each other. So there was wars. Plus, there was also cultural exchanges in peacetime. And China influenced Japan in that their language is written in kanji, which is the symbols. And also Buddhism was brought from China to Japan. In 1543, Portuguese ship basically got shipwrecked into Japan. So they were on their way. This is with the age of the explorers. They were on their way to China to trade with Chinese, and they sort of got blown into Japan and went, oh, interesting, this new place. And they brought with them guns and Christianity. And in 1639, Japan closed its borders to the rest of the world. I think, and I haven't seen this written somewhere, but I think they went guns and Christianity. We're not sure we need that. So they closed their borders and kept it closed for 214 years. The country was like closed off from the whole rest of the world. The town of Nagasaki, down there on the bottom, only a few ships a year were allowed to come there. Dutch ships were allowed to come to trade, and they weren't allowed to go into the rest of Japan. They could only go into Nagasaki. And also Japanese citizens were not allowed to leave the country. So between those 200 and some years, they were closed off from the rest of the world. So in 1853, the United States put warboats into their harbor and said, you will open. And it wasn't a diplomatic thing. It was literally warboats saying, open to trade or else, which I didn't know that in the history of our country that, well, either way. So in 1853 was when the United States said, you'll open. 1868, they moved the capital from Kyoto, the center there, to Tokyo. And Tokyo was called Edo at the time. And Tio, to, means east of, so Tokyoto became Tokyo. And trust me, this will all tie to gardens here shortly. This is not just a history lesson about Japan. Religion, there's two that are the predominant ones. Shinto started in Japan, and it's a little bit like paganism that they don't worship a person. So it worships nature and the ancestors, and it focuses on the here and the now, not the afterlife so much. Buddhism started in India, came to China, then Japan, and it worships Buddha and his followers. And it's got to focus on the afterlife and karma. And the more I learn about Buddhism, the more I see the parallels with Christianity and other organized religions. But either case, the point is, both religions revere nature and gardens. And you can be both. Many Japanese are both. They'll do one religion for marriages and births and the other religion for deaths. Is fairly common. All right, so that was the quick little overview. Now we get to gardens, which is why everybody's come. This is a garden in Tokyo, and I've kind of split it into subcategories and then geographically because I like to be organized. So the elements of a traditional Japanese garden. This is like the Portland Japanese garden, what we think of as a traditional Japanese garden. They usually have water, and water can be ponds or streams. When I was first kind of looking at where to take people on the tours, I thought, well, why would somebody want to go to a garden that's all water? I didn't understand, but now I get the gist of it better. Water is not just a negative space. Water can be reflection. It can be rippling when the wind goes across it. It can be sound. So water is not just a negative thing in a garden. Stones. So they usually have stones, and many times the stones are positioned in a way to represent something. So there's a lot of symbolism. And gravel is raked in a certain way, also symbolism, and then stone lanterns. So having stones is part of a traditional Japanese garden. Plants. And they're not all into flowers quite as much as Western gardens are. So trees, moss is a good thing in their gardens. So we sometimes spend a lot of time trying to get rid of moss, but they accept it and sometimes on purpose encourage moss. So plants and flowers. And then structures, as in bridges, buildings, decorative fences. And they're not usually fences to keep something in or out. They're mostly decorative type fences. And then fish. So those are the elements that are usually in a traditional Japanese garden. And you could spend the entire rest of this time talking about the symbolism. Somebody before the program showed me an amazing book that I'm going to get as soon as I finish here about some of the symbolism. But we're not going to talk about that in this presentation. We're going to talk about some other things. So Japan, we want to think of it as a linear country. And just like our country has different zones in the north, Japan is similar. So there's different hardiness zones. And when you get a guidebook, almost always they say, don't go to Japan in the summertime. Don't go in the summer. It rains all the time and it's too hot. But you got to think about the country being different. So Sapporo is the purple dot up at the top. And in the summertime, it's fine. Maybe you don't want to go here in the winter unless you're into skiing, because this is good ski country. But then on the bottom, the dark green dot is Fukuoka. And that I think might be a little too hot for us, for hot and muggy for the summertime, but it could be a good place to go in the winter time. Kyoto is very, very humid in the summer, and they do have most of their rain in June. And this is Seattle. So we're almost the flip, that we have rain in the winter and they don't. And our temperatures are similar, but the precipitation's different. So keep that in mind if you're going to be going to Japan, that it's not just what the guidebooks say, because they're always going to focus on Tokyo, Kyoto. And even between those two cities, there's differences. So Kyoto, a lot more rain and it's a lot hotter, versus Tokyo, a little bit less rain. Okay, so that's the science part. This is a cherry blossom predictor guide, and you'll start to see these on tourism websites. And it shows that the cherry blossom season is not just 2 weeks, which is what we're told usually. It goes from end of March all the way through middle of May, depending on what part of the country you're in. So it can be a longer season. Plus, cherries blossoms themselves. There's different varieties, obviously. So some bloom earlier and some bloom later. So cherry blossom season is longer than what we're told in the guidebooks. They also have fall foliage maps similarly, and people watch these and try to predict when to have their picnics and things. So they have hydrangea schedules, and these you can find on various tourist websites. They have ginkgo predictors. So the point is, plants are very important to their culture, and kind of being outside and admiring things is important to what they do as a society. Okay, tourism. Most tourism happens Kyoto, Tokyo, but there's a lot of other places that you can get to that aren't specifically in those two cities. Okay. All right, various types of gardens. And this set of various types, this is just what I came up with. This isn't out of a book. It's as I'm looking through my pictures and things, I'm like, I think these are identifiable types. So I'm going to break it into Tokyo and Kyoto, and I'm going to show you just a sampling. And some of these you've probably never heard of. When I do a tour, I almost always go to the place before I take somebody there, because there's examples in here that there's a similar hotel, not the one I'm going to show you, that's on most tour itineraries. And I went there and I was like, that one's not very good. This one's actually better. So I always try to go to the places beforehand so that I can see it. All right, so we're going to dive in, and I'll go quickly, but I'm happy to talk about this later or send you a list of these places. So my first type that I identified was traditional gardens for strolling or boating. So it used to be boating would be you'd be in, like, the big cheese would be in a boat with his entourage of men looking at the garden from a boat. And then it morphed into strolling. So you're strolling around the outside. So these are the older gardens, probably not open to the public when they were first invented or first designed. Kiyosumi is one that I found. It's not going to be on the best of lists, but it is a wonderful, I'm going to show the video hopefully. So it's got all the elements that we talked about. It's got beautiful water. It's got rocks, and the rocks are symbolic. They've been brought there from other places, and they have got a whole sheet of data on where the rocks came from and why they're there. Plants, there's a good reflection right there showing the water being used as a reflective tool. They've got structure. There's a little island. This is the island that you walk across a bridge and you're in the middle of an island. And the thing you don't see in this particular garden is people, because this is not on the best of gardens list, but it's a spectacular garden. So this is just showing you to kind of get off the list sometimes and discover what you see. Hammuraku, this is also a traditional type garden. This one's a little bit, well, better known. It's a former shogun's hunting ground that's now a public garden, and it backs up into tidal water. So there's a moat that has seawater coming into it. There's a tea house in this one. They've got peony fields, flower fields, and they have this. So down in the bottom corner is Sensoji, which is the most visited temple in Tokyo. And most people come on the subway. But if you go 4 blocks behind Sensoji is the river, and you can take a water taxi. And the water taxi's up in the top right corner. The water taxi will take you to this garden. So a much more interesting way to get to this garden from Sensoji instead of a taxi or a subway. They have wonderful signage that is in English and Japanese and cartoon characters. So this one is describing the mats that are around the tree. It's a integrated pest management, basically. They put the mats on in the fall. Little bugs go up in there because it's winter and they're kind of cozied up in there, and then they take the mats off in the springtime and burn them. So it's a way of keeping the bugs down. This is what's called the flower field. So it's some acreage of flowers that are planted that just people to come out and enjoy that part. And there's towers. These are apartment buildings or condos, I think mostly apartments. But some of them will have observation decks that you can take an elevator up and look down into this garden. So it's free observation decks. And that's the tea house there that you can have tea. The little ropeways there, that's in the fall, and that is to keep snow from breaking the branches. But they're done beautifully. They're not just done structurally as utilitarian. They're beautiful as well. So that was the two the strolling boating gardens, the traditional type. There's also tea gardens, which are smaller, secluded spaces. So it's meant to be a place that you and maybe just one or two friends go into and have a more intimate experience. So here's one that's an example. Tien is a Art Deco mansion that has a garden around it, and there's a little tea garden off to the side in Tien. And if you're into Lalique glass, this Art Deco mansion has Lalique fixtures throughout it, and you can tour it. But this is an example of a tea garden, so smaller, more intimate. If you ever go to one of these and there's a little doorway that looks too small for people, that's on purpose because it's meant to be, you have to take your swords off before you go in. So it's meant to be a place of peace. So samurai who have their swords on, you have to take them off before you're allowed to come into the tea house. So the next type is gardens that were meant to be viewed from inside of a building. This was a new concept to me. I'd never even thought about this, but they exist. So the two I'm going to show you are former private homes that you walk through the house and you look out of the windows to the garden. This particular one, you are allowed to walk into the garden. The next one I'm going to show you, which is up north. This one, you can't go out into the garden. You are just meant to look from inside the building out to the garden. And so this is an interesting plan where they've stripped away the house and just left the garden so that you're focusing on that. This is Terry, my darling husband, who he's not a gardener, but he goes along sometimes. And he was looking at this and he said it was like a piece of art, but art at an art gallery is two-dimensional, where this is three-dimensional and it changes. So that was his take on the whole thing. He said, oh, it's like an art gallery, but it's three-dimensional and it's changing all the time. So interesting way of thinking of that. Okay, Gardens that are associated with hotels, restaurants, and public spaces. There's way more of these than you would realize. So Tokyo is one of the largest cities in the world, and you probably think it's all just buildings, 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 concrete, 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 but it's not. It has lots and lots of gardens. So I'm going to show you, I don't know, 3 or 4 probably, but there's dozens. This is Hotel Chinzanso. And this one, you can see there's a hotel with a conference center, banquet room around it, and then it's all surrounding a garden. And when I was here just exploring, there were 12 weddings happening here at the same time. So there was lots of photos happening. They do a mist, like a cloud show a couple times a day where they put clouds in the garden. There's an app, so you can load it on your phone and walk around and identify plants. And they have some historic statues in there that using the app, it'll tell you the history about it. And it's in English and in Japanese. Right next door to it is a retail store. And initially, I wasn't going to go in here because I thought, I can't buy anything. I can't take anything. It's just going to be a retail store. But I'm so glad I went in. This is an example of garden humor. So they say there is no, sakura is cherry blossom. So there's no cherry blossom seeds, no maple seeds, strawberries, bamboo, or wasabi. And it's in English. So apparently they were getting asked that. And they're like, no, we don't have that seed here, but thanks for asking anyway. But they did have crazy cyclamen that I've never seen flowers like this on a cyclamen or like that. And there was dozens of other cyclamens that were just unusual and weird and strange. I have no idea what this is. I haven't been able to identify it on a plant app. I think it's some kind of succulent. And these I am obsessed with. These are Antoinette pansies. Was anybody at Christensen's this weekend? Because they had Antoinette's there, and I don't think they're available in the United States other than if you happen to be at Christensen's this weekend. So I'm hoping somebody brings those in. I'm fascinated by those. Harajuku, this is another city building that instead of having a rooftop garden that's just on the top, they basically cut away part of the building. And this is the mock-up because this just opened a couple of months ago. So I haven't seen it in real life yet, but the garden is built into the building instead of just being on the roof. A roof garden is amazing. This is taking it one next level, one next step. Ginza 6. This is a roof garden, so what we think of as a regular roof garden. And this is on top of a maybe 20-some story building. You have to have a shrine, and it's just a place where you can come and say thanks, and everybody in my family stay healthy. And they had very interesting plants in here. It wasn't just run-of-the-mill plants. There's places you can work and little restaurants up top here. There's a little ice skating rink, and it's in the middle of downtown Tokyo. Kyubashi, this is an apartment building that I just happened to be walking past, and I thought, well, they've done a wonderful job of incorporating greenery here. So it's shopping down below and apartments above. And this is not unusual in Tokyo. You see this fairly often and more. This is a new development. Hapoen, this one's an old one. This has a 400-year-old garden. It's a conference, wedding events venue, and the garden is 400 years old. So when you walk in, you see this tiny little gate. And if you walked into the little gate, so in the picture down on the bottom right, you can see the little gate. But beyond that is this huge garden that is just in the middle of Tokyo. And this is a quick video to show you a little part of it. When I'm exploring gardens for my tours, I usually go in long enough to see the general maintenance, see if there's bathrooms and how many, see if a coach can get in or if a van can get in. And then I don't usually spend a whole lot of time in the garden, sadly. But this one clearly is one that could be on a tour. And if you're ever there for a banquet, you can have a room that overlooks this garden. That's phenomenal. So that garden has been there for 400 years in basically that same layout. Okay, so that was hotels, restaurants, public spaces. Next one is attractions and theme parks. And I'm going to show you one. There's more towards the end of the presentation, but one in Tokyo, there's something called Team Lab Planets, which is one of the most popular tourist destinations right now. And it's interactive lights and music and things. And one of the things they have is a room where orchids are suspended on a fishing line, and it comes down. So when you walk in, there's not orchids, but then the orchids come down and you're immersed in them for 5 or 10 minutes. So it's fascinating to me that this is one of the most popular things to do in Tokyo right now. Okay, botanical gardens, collections like plant collections and research gardens. So these definitely do exist. I'm only going to show you one, and it's Shunkaien Bonsai. And this one wasn't on my tour the first time, but it's going to be on when I go back this fall because I actually went out and saw it, and it's fabulous. I forgot to get a good picture, so all I have is like their brochure. But it's a collection of bonsai, and they do classes, they do tea ceremonies, they'll do banquets. They spoke beautiful English. They seem to have interns possibly from other countries. And this is a terrible photo I got off their website. The reason it wasn't on my tour was their website wasn't very good, and I just wasn't sure about it. So again, I'm always just checking out their bathrooms, and I forgot to take a decent picture. And speaking of bathrooms and public toilets, you will not have a problem finding a public bathroom. They are everywhere, and they're meticulously clean, and they're easy to find. The hard part might be trying to figure out what to do with the buttons, because this is a control panel next to most public toilets, and you have options of water and wind and sound and all sorts of options. So finding a toilet isn't hard. Knowing which button to press is usually a challenge. These are public bathrooms in Tokyo. They have something called Tokyo Toilet that they have done architectural design contests. So these are public bathrooms that are beautiful. I wish we had that sometimes other places. So the last category that I kind of broke things into was dry gardens or moss gardens. And I'm going to skip that one for now because I have some more slides in Kyoto. But I do want to show you one more Tokyo garden. Is this one, Shinjuku Goen. And this is one that somebody in the audience mentioned. This is maybe similar to Longwood Garden in Philadelphia area. So it's 144 acres, and it's got a formal French garden. It's got a traditional Japanese garden. It's got a big glass conservatory. There's a little museum that's new, that's fascinating. Some restaurants. So it's their national garden. And it started as a private residence in the 1700s. And then in 1870, it became an agricultural research center. So kind of like our Master Gardener Extension Bureau offices. So it was an agricultural research center in 1870s. And if you think about 1853 was when the country was opened to the rest of the world. It wasn't too long later that they created this agriculture research center, and it was destroyed in World War II, rebuilt. This poster on the right-hand side shows a gentleman up in the top. They sent people out pretty soon after the 1853 happened because they realized that they needed to bring back knowledge. So this gentleman was credited with bringing back the things that you show down below there: onions, garlic, carrots, peppers, muskmelon. And as I was reading this and thinking about it more, I thought I never heard from them the things that we got from them. So we got Japanese maples, clearly. A lot of iris came from Japan, camellia, and all of these are Japan or China or that part of the world, wisteria, and a number of types of pine. So I think we should sometimes think about like they got all that stuff from us. These are the wonderful things we got from them. Anytime you see Japonica in the botanical name, it's going to be something that's related to Japan. So this is still Shinjuku Goen. This is inside the conservatory, and I wanted to show you large scale versus small scale. This is a little violet that was tucked in a notch in a tree, and I don't think that happened naturally. I think somebody put that in there carefully. So I was just trying to show big versus little. This is an amazing stone lantern, and now it's my touch point. Anytime I'm in this garden, I go to see what it looks like in different times of the year. So it's a beautiful shape, and I don't actually know how it's put together or how old it is. It's just a fascinating stone lantern. Cherry blossoms are amazing. Cherry blossoms, if you get there during cherry blossom season, you'll see scenes like this all the time. People having their photograph done for probably a wedding or for engagement. And then if you go in November, it's chrysanthemums. So those are under little tents, and it's all kinds of chrysanthemums. It happens from November 1st through 15th. Well, that doesn't even look like a real flower, but that's a chrysanthemum. And then this type, this is one plant. So the yellow is a plant and the white is a plant. And I'm going to zoom in so you can see how that is one plant that's all on wire supports. See that tiny little stem? So I don't like, how do they do that? Who thought of that? I don't know, but it's fascinating. Okay, so that was buzzing through Tokyo. There's probably 3 times as many gardens that I could tell you about, but we have limited time. So I'm going to go through a few on Kyoto. Kyoto is the largest concentration of World Heritage Sites in the world. So they have 17 World Heritage Sites just in the city of Kyoto. And I'm going to show you these 7 gardens. And there's way more besides this, but I'm just going to show you these. Higashiyama Kinkakuji, this is also known as the Silver Pavilion. And I wanted to point out in this one that it has 2 names. So it was confusing for me for a while because I was looking at guidebooks, kind of thinking, well, I don't understand. Well, sometimes there's more than one name for the same place. So keep that in mind. This is the Silver Pavilion plus those other 2 names. This is an example of basically a billboard sort of a thing that you'll find outside of most shrines and temples. It's hard to find these online, but when you're actually there, they'll have these outside of most of the places you're going to see. And it's in English and in Japanese. In this particular one, you can get into about 1/3 of what they're showing there. The other parts are private and you can't get into them, but it's nice to have a lay of the land. This is part of the dry garden at Kinkakuji. That's the actual silver pavilion. This is maybe a better picture of the silver pavilion. And it's not flashy, like the gold pavilion is flashy, and that garden or property has a totally different vibe. This has better gardens, and I think it's got a better vibe. The sort of dome-shaped thing is grains of sand that the monks have kept in a shape like that, and it's meant to represent Mount Fuji. And I think it also possibly means grains of sand working together can build something, maybe like our society, that people working together can build something. That's just something I made up in my head. Might be, who knows? So Tofukuji is another temple complex. And this one has some famous gardens that I had been reading about, and I was trying to find them. And this is what they look like. And I'd seen pictures in the books, and we couldn't find them. We walked for hours trying to find them. And I finally did find them, and they're back in that corner. So if you're going to go see these, they're back in the corner behind some other buildings. And their examples, the one on the top especially, is dry garden. And all those rocks symbolize something. But because we wandered and didn't just try to make a beeline right for that garden, we saw some vignettes like this, which I just thought was a charming vignette. We saw this. So we followed these monks, and this was not a funeral. We wouldn't have taken photos if it was a funeral, some kind of a joyous celebration. And the story behind this one that we found so comical is they lit this pyre on fire, and the man in the blue, there's like 4 guys in blue, the smoke alarm went off, so the bells are ringing, the guys are chanting, it was cacophony happening, and it was just fascinating to watch. And then not too long later, these guys roll up, and they were not concerned in the least. They had a look on their face like, yeah, these guys did it again and they don't know how to shut off the fire alarm. So it's just interesting and fun to experience a society that differently than ours. And this, we don't have sound on this, but normally you'd hear monks chanting. But this is showing you the famous dry garden in Tofukuji. It's more atmospheric when the monks are chanting, but you have to imagine it. Okay. Chiunin. This is a very, very, very ancient temple complex. And this is what the building looks like. And what I was going to point out in this one is they don't use nails when they build these. So it's like Lincoln logs. So when we were kids and they had Lincoln logs and wooden pins, they're held together with that. They're not held together with nails. And some of these buildings, this one in particular is one of the older ones. I think it might be close to 1,000 years old. And they maintain it continuously. So it's not, they don't just let it build it and then walk away and let it deteriorate and then have to renovate it. They're continuously renovating and continuously doing upkeep. This is showing you a light festival that was happening in the evening. And I just wanted to show you a couple of pictures. As it gets darker, people stay outside and walking at night is completely safe. Interesting here is sort of a picnic table idea, but people's feet are all up underneath them, so they're not dangling, which is interesting to me. And then that's just a nighttime picture again. So you want to go out at night if you're there and just wander and experience it at different times. Katsura Imperial Villa. I heard somebody mention that one earlier today too. This is owned by the Imperial household, and you can get in to see this one, but it's best if you register. You can take your chances, but you're probably not going to get in. But you can register online. There's a website that they offer English and Japanese guided tours, but you need to sign up ahead of time. So that was what I did. And this gentleman took us around, and you have to go with a guide. You're not allowed to go on your own. He'll tell you all about the plantings and the history and the symbolism. So if you're going to be in Japan, try to get to Katsura Imperial Village. These are some gardeners just finishing for the day. So they do a lot of things by hand. In this garden, I saw people pulling blades of grass with basically little tweezers. So there was a moss area that they didn't want grass to grow into, and they were picking it out with tweezers. Nijo Castle is in the middle of Kyoto. And I saw this and I was like, I don't think I'm going to go to that. It's a fortress. I'm not going to go. But on my last day, thankfully, on the last day of my first trip, I wandered in there and I'm so glad I did because it has amazing gardens. And it has things like this. So this is a Chinese inspired gate that you go through. And I had seen these roofs and they're interesting roofs. They kind of look like a thatch roof in England, similar idea, but they had a cutaway and you could see what it really was. So it's made of cypress bark. So it's cypress bark that's been layered and layered and layered. And now I look at these roofs with a different appreciation because I just think who came up with that and how do they maintain it? Who knows? This is Nijo Castle as well, and this is a nice reflective shot. So you're seeing the water reflect something. That's a tea house. It's open intermittently. They don't have set hours. It's just if they happen to be open when you're there. This is also a Nijo Castle, and these are plants that are wrapped for the winter. And rather than just wrap them and make them look utilitarian, they've made the time and effort to make them look sculptural. The building in the back has what's called nightingale floors, and you can go through there and the floors squeak on purpose. So they make little chirping sounds, and that is so people can't sneak up on you. So you can tell when people are in the building with you. This is a tower that you can look over into the moat area. If you're there at cherry blossom time, they have an amazing camellia collection here that's all tagged by the variety. So check out the camellia there too if you're there at that time of year. Okay, Chohoji, Ikebana, Ikenobo. I'll explain what those mean. Flower arranging is a very big deal in Japan. So you'll see the woman is there to show scale, but flower arranging is very important. And I happened to be there when they were having an Ikebana, like a festival kind of a thing. So Chohoji is the temple that Ikebana was created. So that was the first place Ikebana started being practiced, I think around 800 years ago. And next door to it is this modern building called Ikenobo, which is the school of Ikebana. And so the modern building, they have classes and there's a museum. All of this has symbolism, which I don't understand or know about, but I know each of those branches has a symbol, and I think it has to do with earth and heaven and whatever is not below. But either way, but when I was there, they had 6 floors of this, and I just happened to catch it at the right time. So 6 floors of flower arranging, and it went on and on and on until I just couldn't even imagine all the flower arranging things that they had. There's a department store in Kyoto too that has a bigger display that if you're there at the right time, go to that department store. Okay, Arashiyama. This is a neighborhood, and it's not really a neighborhood, sort of a neighborhood, but there's more to see there than the bamboo forest. So it's known for the bamboo forest, but I'm going to show you more than just the bamboo forest. I'm going to show you Okochi Sanso, Shishuku, which is a garden, and then a restaurant that is Yodufo Sagano. So you can see that I'm only showing you a tiny little section, and you could spend probably a whole week just in that area. This is the famous bamboo forest. So this is what all the tourist books tell you about. They don't tell you that it can look like this if you go in the afternoons. You want to go to the bamboo forest in the morning, and not in the afternoon when it's packed. And these guys on the left in their teal outfits, their entire job is to quietly and patiently move the tourists to the side so the rickshaw can get through. So the rickshaw is a tourist thing, but a lot of locals do it. It's not like a bad tourist thing. But I'm fascinated by the men in their uniforms, and they looked proud of what they're doing. They don't yell at you, they don't blow whistles, they don't push and shove. They just quietly, peacefully say, please move aside for the rickshaw. And that is typical of Japanese culture, is you always use your inside voice, and they're polite and pleasant, always. These signs, I kind of wasn't really paying that much attention. And then Bonnie Burke, who was on the tour with me, she's like, you see these signs everywhere, and it's just deferential. So these are signs that say, we're sorry the construction is disrupting your day. We're sorry the construction is noisy. The one in the middle it's on an escalator saying, don't walk up the down escalator. And the policeman is basically saying, we're sorry, please don't be stupid. But I just think it's so funny that they have these everywhere, just saying, bowing their heads. It's a thing. So anyway, so at the end of the bamboo forest, you'll come to a T, and that takes you to Okochi Sanso Garden. It's a public garden now, used to be a private garden owned by a film star. And you go up through the gates, and this is a place to study calligraphy. There's no guards, so the man in the back there, that's Terry, my husband, and Kate, my friend. And can you imagine having something like this now without a guard? Nobody steals anything. Nobody steals the beautiful painted panels. And people just go in there and write calligraphy without having somebody sitting there and maintaining this and watching it. So if you keep going up the hill on this garden, you'll come to this overlook. This is a river that you can take a boat ride in. The trees across the way are cherry trees. So this was in the springtime. And this is giving you a little bit of a layout, but I don't know if this won't make a whole lot of sense, but I'll skip that one. This is a garden right next to a very famous garden. The very famous garden is going to be packed with people. This is right next door, Shishuku. And both times I've been here, I've been basically the only person here. This is an example of a moss garden, and a garden that kind of is off the radar and people don't notice. And just keep your eyes peeled for that kind of a thing. Don't always go to the place where everybody else is. And also notice on that moss, even though there's flowering trees around and there's trees above, there's not a petal or a leaf on there. And you never hear a leaf blower in Japan. So somebody is either raking that or being careful to take the leaves and the debris off, but it's just spectacular. I just like that picture with the differences of the walkway. And this one, because Richard Hartledge lives in this area, I got a kick out of, they misspelled his name. But it was kind of fun to see something from home in a garden in Japan. This is just across the street from the last garden I was showing you. I still don't quite understand all the statues or who they are, but I think they're hilarious and they're all different, all carved differently. And the story I was going to tell you about this one is the one day that I forgot my umbrella. I was looking at these and there was a downpour, and I ended up underneath that little overhang there, waiting for the rain to pass. And I thought I'd go inside and get something like a cup of tea and charge my phone. And the man said, "We don't have tea, we have a lunch, and everybody has the same thing." And I said, "Okay, well, I'll have that." And I walked through, and there's a garden behind the little walkway. There was a beautiful garden, and I had a delightful lunch that was tofu based. Just wonderful lunch. Everybody had the same thing, and it was fabulous. So if you're in Kyoto, maybe consider that as a lovely place for lunch. This one has music to it, but you're not going to be able to hear it. But you can imagine, I'm going to describe what was happening. So after I left lunch, I could hear music playing, and I didn't know what it was. And I thought, I have nothing else to do. I'll just see if I can find out where that music was coming from. And it was flute music. And I kept walking, kept walking, kept walking for easily a half an hour, and finally found the source of the flute music. And it was a woman playing next to the river. So it wasn't recorded at all. She was actually playing, and she played for well over an hour for no other reason, I think, than her own enjoyment and enjoyment of other people. I wish you could hear, but anyway, it was just one of those serendipitous things. Okay, so that was Kyoto, breezing through really quickly. And we're going to show you a few more. And these are ones that maybe you haven't heard of. Himeji Castle is a fairly famous castle. Looks like that. And you can go up to the top of it. That's what it looks like from the top. The blue tarps that are down below there, cherry blossom season, everybody seems to take the same blue tarp out, and then they have picnics. Seems to be a thing that everybody has. Conformity is a thing in Japan, so everybody has the same blue tarp. And next door to Himeji Castle is Kokoen Garden. So this is the moat between the castle and the garden, and you can do boat rides on the moat. And then this is some of the pictures of Kokoen Garden, and it's divided up into rooms. So this is a map showing the Garden of Summer Trees. I think there's 7 different themes. The signs are in English and Japanese. There's beautiful signage. Look at how gorgeous that sign is. And it tells a little bit about the history and, that particular plant. There's a tea house in there as well, so you can get something to eat. The town of Kobe, or the city of Kobe. I love ski lifts and ropeways, and I was intrigued by, in Japan, they're called ropeways. So this is called a ropeway, any kind of a gondola kind of thing. So when I saw a garden that had a gondola, I was like, oh, I'm going out there. So you take this gondola up, and it takes a good maybe 5 minutes or so, maybe a little longer. And as you're going up, you'll see down below there, the stripes are part of the garden. The 4 different glass houses, that's part of the garden. It's conservatory and a restaurant and things. So as you're going up the hill, you get a glimpse of what you'll see as you walk down the hill. They had classes like aroma, smelling different plants and what they smelled like. This is inside the conservatory. It's a young lady with a bunch of orchids. Coming down the hill, there's areas that had grasses. This was coming down Primula, I think. There was an area that had, I believe that's a turnip or a radish, but they had some edibles mixed in with flowers. And then halfway down, there's hammocks, so you can just sort of hang out in the garden. So this is not a Japanese style garden, but it's in Japan. So that's what I hope the takeaway on this is, that not all gardens in Japan are Japanese gardens. Okay, Obubu Tea Farm. I have to tell you a story about this one. So my first trip, I'm on the train and I see this. Like, what is that? And I started Googling and I kind of was realizing, okay, that is tea. So it's tea plantations, which made me think, can you visit a tea farm? So I did a little research before my second trip and I realized, yes, there is a tea farm that they'll do tours, but there was no public transit or trains to get there. So I rented a car. Partially to go see this tea farm and also to see if a bus could get through. And thankfully I did, because like a bus would not get there, and I'm not sure a bus could back up. If you got a bus into that, I think you'd have a really angry bus driver. But we eventually got there in the car, and this is what their tea plantations look like. And they go on for acres and acres and acres and acres and acres. They're near Nara, which is a famous tourist town, and Uji, which is not as famous, but should be. So if you're trying to decide between Nara and Uji, go to Uji, because I think it's actually better. It doesn't get as much publicity. But this gentleman gave my tour group a fabulous experience. He did a very animated presentation about the types of tea, how tea's grown. Tea is a camellia. So there's a type of camellia plant that is what tea is made of. He did something about the temperature of water, and we had a tasting thing. It was just absolutely, it was amazing, the tour. And when we got home, I noticed that they had a Kickstarter on their webpage, and they were trying to buy a bus so that people from Kyoto could get to them, because not everybody's going to rent a car like I did. So they were trying to buy a bus, and they were pretty far away, pretty far as in maybe $10,000 away from their goal. And I sent it out to everybody I could think of, and within 8 days we got them over the limit. So they now have a bus that you can get to Kyoto, to from Kyoto out to their tea farm. So that is an example of tourism doing something good, hopefully. So Hakone is a town in between Tokyo and Kyoto, closer to Tokyo, and it has amazing art museums. Next to one of the art museums is a garden. So this is a moss garden next to one of the world-class art museums. So this is a ceramics museum, but they also have some art museums that have a collection of impressionist paintings. There's probably the world's largest Lalique museum in the world is in Hakone. And it's such a strange place to have these amazing, fabulous museums. There is a botanical garden there, and part of the story on this one is I could not find it. I knew it was there somewhere, and I was looking and looking and looking, and I finally went into a shop and I said, "Where's this garden?" And she said, "Well, ignore the do not enter sign. That's actually for trucks, trucks and cars." So once I got past the do not enter sign, this was in the winter, and there was a lot of winter interest, which I wasn't expecting. I had a tour group go that was a little bit earlier, and they went further than I did. I only went as far as the bathrooms and this part, so I didn't see the rest of it. But they said it was actually a really good botanical garden. And their signs are in English and in Japanese. These are just some of the interesting things that I saw while I was there. And then the big one, strangely named Hakone Open Air Museum. It's a sculpture park. So famous sculpture artists, they have the largest Picasso ceramics collection in the world, and it's at what's called the Hakone Open Air Museum. So sculpture, 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 including this one, which is a stained glass tower that you walk in the tower. And this one I'm starting to see on Instagram, so it might be becoming more well-known outside of just Japan. It's fascinating to go in here, but it was really under the radar, and didn't have many people know about it before. Yeah, it's really cool to go in there. Yeah. And I'm surprised how many tours don't have this on their itinerary. Anyway, Hakone. So this as a region, this is just a tourist thing to tell you. It's called Free Pass. That doesn't mean it's free. It's one of the confusing things. Sometimes translation doesn't work out right. But if you go to Hakone, get the free pass because it lets you get into all these things with one ticket, including ropeway. We all love ropeways. This one goes over steam vents that are volcanic, and this is how they get hot water for their onsen. Onsen are the baths, so the sauna baths. In Japanese hotels, usually you get either pajamas or what I would call pajama. They obviously have a different name, but it's bathrobe kind of thing. And you're meant to wear those in the lobby. And so this is one of the tour groups. And we were just puttering around in the evening in our Japanese loungewear. There's a boat there that you can take that's a tourist boat that you go on a lake and you can see Mount Fuji. So if you're in Hakone, spend a little time. And then I'm going to show you Kamakura. This is an easy day trip from Tokyo. And most people go to see this giant Buddha. That's usually what people go down to see, and then they probably go back. But there's lots more to see in Kamakura, including Hasadera, which is probably my favorite garden in Japan at the moment. Lots of stuff to see in this particular garden. And this is not even the most famous garden in Kamakura. There's other gardens in this area that I didn't get to yet. This fascinates me because all the little statues are carved and different. They're not cast concrete. They're all different. Nobody's gone in there and knocked them over. They're not stolen. They're not spray painted. They're just, and they've been there for who knows how long, hundreds of years possibly. And look how many there are. They keep going. Okay, Hitachi Seaside Park in Tokyo. I saw this plant. I put on Facebook. I was like, what is that? And somebody wrote, oh, it's kochia. And so, of course, there's a kochia park that you can go to and see the kochia change color. There's Ashikaga Flower Park. This one I haven't been to, but they do a big wisteria celebration. There is any kind of fruit. They're very into artisanal fruit. So they have, you pick strawberries that are more of an experience than they are picking for just whatever. They have iris festivals, camellia festivals, azalea festivals, phlox festivals. All of these things are festivals and reasons to celebrate nature and what's around us. So those are the types of gardens that in my, like, I think I'm going to categorize them. This is what I came up with as the various types. And the big picture point is not all gardens in Japan are Japanese gardens. So I have just a couple more slides and then we'll be done because I'm probably over time. These are some of the books that I have. I would recommend these two. These are Tuttle Publishing, and these are very good guides to gardens, but they're going to be the Japanese style gardens. They're not going to have the flower parks and that kind of thing. And these two, if you're going to Tokyo, this is a Japanese author, or I'm sorry, German author. It's been translated to English. The one on the right in particular, Japan in 60 Easy Steps, is the best guide I've seen for anybody who's going to go to Japan that wants to know how to navigate and how to, like, just the culture and how to do things right and how to do things, so you're not sticking out like a sore thumb and you're not confused. And then I have a website that is really good if you want to see specific gardens. And this is also going to be the traditional Japanese style gardens. They're not going to have the flower parks and things like that. And there's another one. So these are YouTube channels. And then this is a TV channel that you can watch on your computer or on cable. It's run by NHK, which is basically like the BBC. So it's Japan's version of the BBC, but they have English language station. And then one more slide. If you are looking for a book, this is a woman from Oakland, California, and she got herself accepted to become a garden worker in Kyoto. And it's a fascinating book that's about gardens and life and the Japanese culture. And it's just a really great read. So that is my program. Wow. So it was fast.
That was just.
It was like a fire hose of information.
Yeah.
Lois, this is a two-part question. It has to do with the version that we all remember, 2007. December 7th, 1941.
Mm.
But out of that has come the Sister Cities organization. And this botanical garden, Yao is the sister city and has a Japanese garden. And in Seattle, Kobe is the sister city.
Oh,
All with the idea of peace and finding a home between the countries of something that one times quite horrible.
yeah.
There's Portland's garden have a sister city.
They
Yeah.
do. The Portland Japanese Garden. Ooh, I should know that. I know they do. I don't know what city it is.
Well, that's the next question, as you travel to the different Japanese gardens, did you see any American cities that were sister cities to their gardens as we have to their cities in our country?
Gosh, not that I saw, but that wasn't something I was looking for. So now that you've asked me that, I will look. When I'm there in October, I'll be like, huh, I wonder about that. I can tell you the sister city for Portland's Chinese garden is Shanshu. No, anyway, but I don't know the Japanese garden, but I'm sure there must be. That's a great question. And now it's going to be on the top of my mind, and I'm going to keep an eye out for that.
I mean,
So don't leave.
Another question? I also.
Wait, there's one back there. There's a question.
Where?
I was just curious whether there were any particular plants or trees that you could talk about that were especially notable, individual plants.
So the way they do conifers fascinates me, the pruning, and the book that I mentioned at the end there, she talks about pruning techniques. It's not a garden book, it's more, I can't even describe it. I've read it twice because it was so like, oh wow, that's really interesting. But the way they prune conifers is fascinating to me. So not as a plant, as a type of plant, I don't know that I could pick that out, but just the way they approach gardening is so meticulous. Yeah, and it's like gardening is not considered work. It's considered almost like a religion, maybe. Like it's something you do that's just part of your daily routine, that you do your plant thing. So it's not considered work there, I don't think. Maybe it is, but it didn't seem like it. It felt like it was more of a lifestyle.
Right.
Okay.
Great.
Right, you had it all, history, videos, beautiful scenery and,
If you want to hear about my husband's ancestry, I could go on and kind of like that.
well, before we draw for these beautiful plants, there are 4 fuchsias. The name is in the pot. It's an unpronounceable name of the cultivar, and 1 tuberous begonia for you to choose from. But before that, I want to make sure you all know about our symposium on September 20th. It is going to be fabulous. We have 4 speakers, including Troy Scott Smith, who is the curator at Sissinghurst Garden in England. And all of these speakers are curators of other gardens. And I don't think you want to miss that. We have these little cards in case you want to pick one up if you didn't already. The registration is open. Last year it filled, and some people didn't get in who wanted to buy a ticket. So don't delay. Go to our website and register. It's a Heronswood Bellevue Botanical Garden Symposium. All right, Lois, will you please do the owner? Okay. Last 3 numbers, 555. That's got to be a lucky one. 482555. We have a winner. All right, congratulations. All right, next one, 552. Oh, the lady who made the beautiful flower arrangement back there.
Beautiful.
545. Okay. More to go. 557. Yay, congratulations. 549. Yeah.
All right, there's the last winner.
All right. Congratulations, everyone, and thank you so much for coming. We'll see you at the symposium, if not before.